This video covers troubleshooting of the HolidayCoro Flex system. The Flex system is based upon a modular structure. It is comprised of a CPU and an expansion board system. Now we have various different versions of each, and they are interconnected with ribbon cables. Now, let's first go through the CPU side. On the CPU, in this particular case, we're looking at a HinksPix Pro version 3, which has 5 expansion ports, and they are always numbered at the very top, starting with the lowest number. And they're always 16 at a grouping. So this is 1 through 16, 17 through 32, 33 through 48, and so on. Now, the HinksPix Pro version 3 does have 2 extra, which is unique to this particular CPU. Now, few notes about this. Again, as I mentioned, the lowest board is always at the top here. And that's because when a ribbon cable goes down and under, it's going to go first to the board below it. It's also important to understand that while these ribbon cables may have multiple connectors, those connectors are designed to be cut off to the length needed. So this is a common cable used and has connections. Each one of these ribbon cables is required for each one of these ports. We do not hook up multiple expansion boards on each individual ribbon cable. It must be one expansion board per ribbon cable per port. Now, a few things about the connectors here. So you'll see that we have these hooks on all the modern current versions of the boards, not only the CPUs, but the long range and SPI type boards. And those are to ensure that the ribbon cable is properly connected. Now, when you install a ribbon cable, there is a little key up here, so it is impossible to install it incorrectly. That will go into this slot, and so when we push it in, you will notice that these hooks come up and grab the connector. That's to ensure that during shipping or transportation or any kind of movement that this ribbon cable does not become loose. Now, it's important to understand that these should be fully seated and flush. If they are sticking out or down, even if the ribbon cable is in the port or jack, it is not fully seated. These must be fully seated and the connectors must be all the way vertical to indicate that they are properly seated. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at another CPU. In this particular case, here we have an AlphaPix. This has 3 ports. Again, still the same setup. It has 1 through 16, 17 through 32, and 33 through 48. Now, what hooks to those? It is boards such as this. This is a long-range expansion board. Again, you can see it has the same connector, and you will also see that it is aligned so that when these boards are stacked together, that the ribbon cables are in alignment. So in this particular setup, depending upon how much spacing exists between this board and that board, you would have a ribbon cable here and then a ribbon cable here. Now, this means that you can cut off this additional ribbon cable. Again, I stress, one ribbon cable per board. So you could simply take a set of scissors and chop that off. It should also be noted that all operation and unplugging of connectors should only be performed when there is no power applied to the controller or the expansion board. So make sure that there's no power if you are disconnecting, reconnecting, or checking the connections on these boards. All right, so the first step is that this board, the expansion board, no matter what kind it is what provides power to the CPU. There is no dedicated power supply or power connection into the CPU. This connection over here on the side or this connection over here is just for the fan power, if you should have a fan in your particular unit. So, it is important that for your CPU to operate, you must apply power to the expansion board, no matter if it's a long range or SPI or whatever. Now, how do you know if there's power applied to this long range? You have a little light down here in the corner that lights up red. Now, this applies to the SPI boards. So, here let's take a look at a SPI board. So here, you can see that this SPI board has a red light down here in the corner indicating that it is currently powered up. So that is what provides power to the CPU. So first step, make sure that your ribbon cables are properly and fully seated. In some cases, depending upon how compact your unit is, you may need to remove the screws from the CPU and then inspect and connect or check the ribbon cables if you're experiencing any issues. So make sure that all ribbon cables are fully seated with the connectors fully in their vertical position and that there is power applied. Now, how do you know if the boards are actually really present? How do you know that the controller can actually see these expansion boards or what expansion boards it is attached to? Now, the controllers have the ability to be able to tell exactly what kind of board is connected. So they will be able to tell you if this is a long range, an SPI direct board, or if this is, let's say, an AC board. Now, it will not tell you the exact model number, but it will tell you the type of board. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So we're going to go into the web interface of the controller. In this particular case, we're looking at the AlphaPix, and we just have brought it up. And you can see the AlphaPix interface, which is a very simple controller, shows port 1. Now, port 1 would be the very top. And you can see that these are oriented as 1 through 16, as we previously mentioned. So this says that there is a differential port found connected to that ribbon cable. If we scroll down, we see that the second ribbon cable connection, port 2, is not connected. There is nothing here. Now, if you put some setting in here, it will not apply, but there is no expansion board connected to this. If we scroll down further, we can see that there is a 16-port SPI board connected to the third ribbon cable. Now, it should be noted that a common question we will receive is that when we assemble a controller from HolidayCoro, often you will see that the port numbers start at 33 through 48. And this is because in most cases that's the largest number of ports. And this is because if you stack a board or expand your boards in the future, since these outputs have specific output cable numbers, we don't want you to have to relabel them when you move them around. So we build from the bottom up, and so most boards are built with this SPI at the bottom, and then the long ranges almost always go at the top because we cannot stack an SPI on top of a long range. So it's SPI, SPI, long range, and then CPU. So that's why you'll almost always see the differential long range at the very top. And maybe if you have no extra SPI board, nothing in the middle. All right, so you can clearly see what is connected and is not connected. Now, if you have physical boards and you have checked everything, in other words, you've looked at the power, you've made sure the connectors are all good, and you are still seeing a no expansion board connected, that indicates possibly a problem with the firmware. So make sure that your firmware is up to date. Sometimes a board will come out with a new model and it will require updated firmware. So make sure your firmware is updated. Now, if you have an existing controller and it was working fine, you've made no changes to it, and then all of a sudden the SPI or the long range differential disappears, that is almost always a case of a physical disruption of the cable or power. So make sure that there's appropriate cabling and power. Now, you also have to have sufficient power. You can scroll down and you can actually look at each one of these, and we'll show you this on the HinksPix in a moment. Here we can see differential expansion, and the voltage here is 3.6 volts and 4.7 volts and 4.8 volts. And you can see the expansion port number 2 is none. That's because there is none connected. Now, you'll also see that there's often a temperature that's also displayed for the board. That applies to some boards like the SPI that can generate a lot of heat, but not for boards like the differential. Okay, let's go ahead and switch over to our HinksPix. So on our status page right here, what we can see is that we see voltages LR1 and SPI3. LR1 means that the long range is in position port 1 and the SPI is in port 3, and the voltages are, you can see, similar in this particular case. All right, you can also see on this particular board that if we go up to the port config, we can see when we highlight this that we have the same thing matching. LR1, SPI3, LR1, no expansion board installed or present, and again, 33 through 48, that's the third port, is the local SPI. Now, these blocks right here are empty because this is not a long HinksPix Pro version 3, which does have 49 through 80. It has 2 extra ports. Now, again, if you have checked the physical connections on your controller and they are all working and there's power, make sure your firmware is up to date. That is really the only common reason why you will not see these boards. Power, physical connection with a ribbon cable, duplicate boards, multiple boards on one ribbon cable. Those are the issues that will cause your board not to normally appear. We hope this has been helpful. Of course, if you ever have any additional questions about your setup, feel free to reach out to us at holidaycoro.com/contact us.